On today's show, me and Michael will start our NBA preview with the Eastern Conference prediction. We're going to go 1 through 10, predict all 10 seeds that will make the playoffs and the play in tournament. And to start the show as well, go over our NBA awards predictions. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, share it with your friends, leave a comment below. Roll the intro. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 126. Recording this at 10:38 on October 12th, about a week away from the NBA season, less than a week away now. And this is a full NBA episode. We're going to cover the Eastern Conference. We're going to give our NBA awards predictions. But joining me from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Ween. What's up?
What is up, everybody? I love the new intro. I was not expecting that, but I love the new intro. Episode 126, and we're back talking basketball. I mean, I can only think of one thing better than back talking basketball, and that's back talking football. It's going to be a great NBA season. I'm looking forward to it. It starts all on Tuesday with two great games. That will be televised on TNT. We have MLB playoffs going on right now. We're smack dab in the middle of that right now as the division series are going on. Football season continues to ramp up. So we got a full plate, if you will, here on the Raw Prospect Podcast. But we have you all covered, going all the way up to the World Cup, which is coming up here in a little over a month now. With that, we'll just go ahead and start. We'll jump right in since we have a lot to get to. We're going to talk about 4 awards today. The MVP, the Defensive Player of the Year. And then I think we're going to talk about Rookie of the Year and Sixth Man, if I'm correct. So where do you want to start?
Let's start with the big one. Let's start with the MVP.
All right, why don't you give your thoughts first?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I have 3 guys that I think are the front runners for MVP, in my opinion. First, I think it's Joel Embiid. I think there's going to be some bones thrown his way since he's had back-to-back seasons where he was runner-up. I think there's a chance that the Sixers could be a top 2 seed as well, which will bode well for his case also. And I just think with the amount of games he's playing on national TV and the amount of opportunities he'll have to prove himself in front of, all of America, all the world, really, with how big the NBA's fan base is. I just think the narrative will be on his side, and I think this might just be his year. He puts up the numbers. He's shown he can stay healthy, which has always been the big thing with him. And also, he has a thing that one of my other 2 guys doesn't really have, which is the defense side of things. My second guy is Giannis. I think the voter fatigue from him winning 2 in a row 3 years ago now, I think that's all gone. I think he's ready to, take the league by storm once again. And, I think he's unanimously either the best player in the world or the second best player in the world. Yet not a lot of people are mentioning him in terms of the MVP, which I think is a mistake. I think Giannis has to be 1 or 2 on that list, whether you have him at 1 or 2, no matter who you have him on that list with, Giannis has to be there. And then 3, call me a homer if you want to, but I got Luka. My only concern is whether or not the Mavericks will win enough games in that tough Western Conference. But we'll get into that on the Western Conference preview show. The point is, Luka's going to put up the numbers. He's coming in. He's coming into this season in shape and in form as well. After recently playing in the Euro. What is it called? I think it's just called the Euro Championship. I think FIBA. Sorry, Euro FIBA. Um, he's in shape. He's in basically mid-season form, and I just think with the numbers he's about to put up, whether he's top 4 seed or not, I just think those numbers are going to be hard to deny.
I'm looking at the odds according to VegasInsider.com for NBA MVP. And you nailed the top 3. And I think I generally agree with you. I think I would go Luka number 3, Joel Embiid number 2, and then Giannis number 1. Personally, I think Giannis is the no doubt best player in the world right now. And he's got room to improve, which is the crazy thing. Joel Embiid, of course, we saw what he can do last season. I think the Sixers, as you will see in our next segment, during the regular season are going to have a really good regular season. I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to put up those numbers, and he's going to be a really valuable part. And then, of course, Luka, he's going to have the statistics part of that. But the question is, will the Mavericks win enough games if they are a top 4 seed and he puts up numbers like we expect him to? He could definitely win the award. But I'm looking at the odds. Outside of those top 3, Durant at plus 1,000. Durant and Jokic are plus 1,000. I don't think Jokic, as great as he is going to win a 3rd straight MVP just because of, as you mentioned, there is voter fatigue. Giannis won 2 in a row, and then Jokic won 2 in a row. I don't think anybody's going to win 3 in a row unless he has some insane season. But I look at Tatum plus 1,200. If he can, take another step, that could be a good bet. And also Curry plus 1,300. So if I was, actually putting my money on somebody, I might take one of those as like a value pick. There's also John Morant plus 1,400, depending on what you think he's going to do during the regular season. And then Kawhi and LeBron at plus 1,800 with Zion Williamson right behind him at plus 2,000. So those are just some maybe value picks if you're, looking to bet on it or just curious. But I do agree with you. I think Luka, just because of the sheer numbers he's going to put up, as we mentioned, I think on our last podcast, the Mavericks did at least get more balance during the regular season. So I do think that will help Luka. And then Embiid and Giannis, I think, are obvious choices as long as they stay healthy.
Right. Okay. Moving on. I think we should do Defensive Player of the Year next.
All right, go.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. My pick this year, this might surprise some people, but I think he's getting overlooked a little bit. He just got, a big contract a couple years ago. He got injured in the middle of last season. They were a top 6 defense in the NBA. My pick is Jared Allen. He was an all-star last year, and I think what he's able to do for this Cavs team, if they're able to, maintain being a top 6 defense or even move up, I think it will mostly be because of him and Evan Mobley. If you look at who they have in their backcourt and in terms of wing defenders, I mean, it's not a whole lot of depth. That's really the only question with this Cavs team right now is on the defensive end. And I think what Jared Allen is going to be able to do in terms of covering up those mistakes, a lot like how we talked about Rudy Gobert when he was with the Jazz. covering up some of those mistakes that the defenders make on the perimeter, and being the anchor of that defense, I think he'll have a really good case for it.
That's some good value if you're looking to put money down. Right now, according to Vegas Insider, Jared Allen is listed at plus 2,800. So he's a little bit down on the list, but that's definitely a good sleeper pick. For me, I'm thinking more along the lines of a Mikal Bridges. Um, I like what he does and what he provides for Phoenix. And if Ben Simmons can stay on the court, Ben Simmons at plus 2,200, just ahead of where that Jared Allen, Jaren Jackson Jr. duo is. I like that because I think if Simmons is on the court, there's one thing we know he's going to do. He's going to be guarding the best player on what should be a pretty good team. And in his best seasons, he's been an all-world defender. So as long as he stays healthy and is available, I like Ben Simmons and also Mikal Bridges. We'll see how this whole Draymond Green situation plays out, but he could also make some noise. Last season's winner was Marcus Smart, who's listed at plus 1,100. The three favorites right now, Rudy Gobert plus 450, Bam Adebayo plus 700, and then Giannis at plus 800.
Yeah, I think the other guy I would pick actually is Rudy Gobert because I think getting traded to a new situation kind of resets, how we think of him. And if he's able to, anchor that defense, I mean, he's shown over and over again if he's on a team, they're automatically a top 10 defense. And last year was kind of the anomaly of his career with the Jazz, who were kind of a middling defense. I think they were around 12 or 13th last year, but every year before that, they were either top 5, top 6, top 7, somewhere in that range, and sometimes even elite top 3, top 2. So the addition of him to that Minnesota Timberwolves team, I think a lot of the credit might end up being pointed to him if things go well in the regular season for them.
Yeah. So why don't we move on? I want to keep this segment a little bit shorter.
Right, around 20 minutes, hopefully.
Yeah, and we can talk more about this on our Western Conference preview if there's more that we need to talk about. But for the sake of this episode and time, we're going to keep this segment to about 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and do Rookie of the Year. What do you think for Rookie of the Year?
Well, I kind of got talked into this one by our friend Hamont, actually, who's in the fantasy league with us and actually drafted this player and was talking up to me about him and making the case saying, like, this team, they need a 4. They need their power forward. And there's a clear place for him to have a role immediately and make an impact. And that player is Keegan Murray. That's the pick where in the draft, a lot of people were questioning the Kings' decision to draft Keegan Murray, but he's looked good in the summer league. He's looked good in the preseason, and that narrative has all kind of flipped the entire other way. Now he's being talked about as one of the top Rookie of the Year candidates, and he actually is my pick to win it this year. What he's been able to show so far, just in terms of 3-point shooting, that's one of the main things we talk about with the Kings every year is they need spacing. They need, front court scoring on a more consistent basis. And I think on a certain level, he'll be able to bring that. Whether it's any more high level than just 3-and-D, that's really yet to be seen. But I think he can give you, 15, 16 a night on good efficiency, and I think that's good enough for Rookie of the Year.
So the top 3 consensus picks right now are going to be Banchero at plus 180, who would be my pick right now. I think he's just going to give so much to that Magic team. He's going to put up insane numbers. He's just ready-made in the oven coming out of Duke. I think we've seen that in the preseason. So as long as he could stay healthy, I'd go Banchero, chalk plus 180. I think Keegan Murray's not a bad pick. I watched a lot of him when he was at Iowa. Great player, good three-point shooter, fairly athletic too. Can get to the basket and has some good finishing touch ability around the rim. But some people think that Sacramento may be sort of a sleeper candidate to push for a play-in spot in the Western Conference right now. So if he's a big part of that, he could get a lot of press for winning Rookie of the Year. So I certainly don't think that's a bad pick. And then Jaden Ivey plus 550. I don't think that's a bad pick either. Pairing him with a guy like Cade Cunningham on the Pistons, I think he'll have a pretty big year. My sleeper pick, personally, would be Benedict Mathurin, who got drafted by the Pacers out of Arizona. He's been one of my favorite players ever since I watched him for the first time at the beginning of last college basketball season. Arizona, as we know, is one of the best teams during the regular season, and it was in large portion because of Benedict Mathurin and what he's able to do on both ends, from an athletic standpoint, on the defensive end, his length, to just shooting the ball. He's a spot-up, knockdown three-point shooter. So I like everything about Benedict Mathurin. I guess my question would be how much playing time he's going to get. But I think on that Pacers team, he should see a fair amount of time. And with guys like Tyrese Halliburton who can set him up to make plays, I think he's a good sleeper pick.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Okay, moving on to our last award. I think, what do we have?
It's going to be six man.
Six
man of the
man,
year.
right. Okay. For six man of the year, I think an underrated pick would be Christian Wood. Coming off the bench for the Mavericks, I think he's going to be, in the perfect position to succeed. He's basically just going to come in, have the green light to take as many shots as he wants. And he's shown that he can fill up, not really the stat sheet, but the scoreboard. And he's a very, very good scorer. And his three-point shooting is very much needed on this Mavericks team. So I think he's going to provide probably around 18 and 8. And I think that's more than enough to win a six man of the year. Another guy that a lot of people mention is Jordan Poole, of course. Whether or not he'll be coming off the bench or not going into this year is actually a pretty interesting conversation. But if he is coming off the bench for the majority of the year, you can't really get a much better pick than that. And he's the favorite for a reason. He's a microwave. I see him as, a Lou Williams type of player that can just get hot at any moment. And once he makes a couple shots, he's going to get on a roll and make 4 or 5 in a row.
Yeah, Jordan Poole, microwave scorer. He's the favorite at plus 400. Can get hot from three. We saw a lot of growth from him during the regular season last year and during the playoffs, of course, on that run to the championship for the Golden State Warriors. As long as that punch didn't affect him too much from Draymond Green, he'll be in the running. I think, Christian Wood's give him a good look at plus 700. He's third right behind Tyler Hero at plus 450. I think with Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons, with, Norman Powell, I think might be give him a good look at plus 2,500. I think those are the guys. Bobby Portis maybe at plus 2,800 for the Bucks. Those would be my guys. I'm not going to make a hard prediction. I'm just giving you guys I guess my hard prediction, if I had to make one, would probably be Jordan Poole plus 400. But we don't know, once again, if he's going to be in the starting lineup or be coming off the bench. It might be a combination of both. I don't know, man. I think there are some really good candidates for all these awards, and I'm just excited to see how they play out. And we will readdress this. We always do come about mid-season or a little bit more towards the playoffs as who the definitive favorites are at that point. But for now, 21 minutes in, I think we can move on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's get into our Eastern Conference picks. So for this segment, we're just going to be giving our playoff seedings for the top 10 teams in the East going into the playoffs this coming April. So I guess we'll both start at 10 and then work our way down. And I guess I'll have you start.
Okay, so at number 10, I had the New York Knicks slipping into a playoff or a play-in spot, the last play-in spot near the end of the season. Of course, you add Jalen Brunson, who was a big coveted free agent, who had a great year last year with the Dallas Mavericks, to give you some extra scoring punch, to give you some extra playmaking. I think RJ Barrett hopefully will continue to take that next step. He showed some really good things at points in times last year. And hopefully there's regression back to the positive mean, if that makes any sense whatsoever, for Julius Randle. Of course, he had that big year a couple of years ago, but struggled at times, especially with his shot last year. So if he can, improve just a little bit with RJ Barrett and Jalen Brunson, what they have right now. I like some of the surrounding pieces as well with Obi Toppin and some other guys. Mitchell Robinson, who I believe they signed to an extension this offseason. I like the Knicks team, and I think when you're comparing them with some of the other teams that would be competing in this range, I gave them the edge.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I was kind of between three different teams. I had the Knicks, of course, in that range as well, and then Washington, and then Detroit. Actually, I think I'm a lot higher on Detroit than a lot of people are, and it's a really risky pick. But there's always, a surprise team that ends up either getting into the play-in or being right on the edge of it at 11 or 12. So I did end up going with Detroit in the 10 spot to be that surprise team. And really, my reasoning for that is just simply they picked up Alec Burks, they picked up Nerlens Noel, they traded for Bogdan Bogdanovic. So those are moves that a team that wants to start winning makes. And also, those are moves that, add veteran presence. And also, they have a coach that I trust in Dwayne Casey. That's also an underrated part in this as well. The Wizards, on the other hand, I'm not sure about Wes Unseld yet. And same with the Knicks. I don't know if Tom Thibodeau can, you know, get enough offense mustered to be, to be able to win enough of those close games late in the fourth quarter. Because that's when the game really slows down. That's when the offense gets tough. And that's where I kind of question the Knicks' ability to put the ball in the basket.
That's fair. I actually did consider Detroit, but I ended up giving the Knicks the edge just because I think Detroit has another year of maturation and development, if you will. But player for player, talent wise, I do think you could probably make the argument that Detroit has that that edge. Number 9. I went with, and by the way, guys, I think for our Western Conference episode, which will be within the next week, We'll be giving over under win totals, but we just didn't have time to sort through all of that for this episode. So we'll be doing that for Western Conference. But for number 9, I went with the Chicago Bulls, who returned to the playoffs last season after 4 straight seasons where they finished as a lottery team. They were aggressive. They made some moves, getting DeMar DeRozan to go with Zach LaVine, also getting Nikola Vucevic, and adding Lonzo Ball last year with Alex Caruso as well. But of course, as we know, he was a very important part of that team for the first half of the season. Then he got hurt, wasn't with them for the playoffs. They had some injuries. It was sort of a disappointing flameout in the first round of last year's playoffs. They were 27-13 in mid-January. Lonzo Ball went out with a major knee issue, and they went 19-23 from there. They slid from the first seed at the time all the way down to the 6th seed, and then they had a pretty quick exit from the postseason. However, I think last year was a indication of this team's potential, but I just think the East is getting more and more competitive, and I just think that there are too many teams in front of them that I just couldn't put them ahead of. I do think they're going to be a play-in team. Maybe they're not the 9 seed. Maybe I'm underestimating them a little bit. I want to see a big jump from Patrick Williams, and I'm just not sure if that's going to be possible, given his injury history and this and that. And the Eastern Conference is better. I still like the Bulls. I think they could possibly make some noise, but I just think the Eastern Conference as a whole is getting better, and I need to see some things.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have the Bulls at number 9 also. I question the Bulls defensively. They still have trouble protecting the rim. They signed Andre Drummond to kind of remedy that a little bit, but he's not the rim protector he used to be. But on top of that, I just think this offense is a little bit too simplistic in the half court. It's a lot of, DeMar DeRozan pump fakes and shooting tough mid-range shots. Zach LaVine taking tough threes off platform. I think it's a little bit too simplistic. I think if they, implemented more ball movement or did some of the things they did at the beginning of last season, getting out on the open floor, causing turnovers, causing havoc on defense, that was the identity of the team. And that's when they kind of fell off, is when they got away from that identity of forcing turnovers and like really giving a lot of ball pressure and making the opposing ball handlers uncomfortable with that duo of Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball. But that's also leads into my next point. If Lonzo Ball is healthy, I can see them being higher. But I also want to say if Lonzo Ball, on the slight chance he misses a ton of time, I could also seeing them missing the play-in entirely. They have a lot of high-end talent, obviously, with DeMar and Zach LaVine, but I also just think a lot of things went right for them last year, at the beginning of last year. And the East got better, and they kind of just stayed the same.
I do like, though, they did draft Ayo Dosunmu,
Right.
a good, nice, solid combo guard out of Illinois, who was at times, I think, overused last year at Illinois. But of course, college basketball is a lot different than the NBA. But he's a guy that I think will give them solid minutes off the bench right away. And I think there are some other pieces on that team that we just got to see on the court on a consistent basis. If Lonzo Ball plays, and Alex Caruso, some of these other guys stay healthy, Patrick Williams too, they have a chance to reach a higher ceiling and potential. But the Eastern Conference got better, and that's just something that I think you nailed right on the head. They kind of just it's kind of the same team from last year with a couple of minor additions. They did add, I think, Goran Dragic, who will be also another nice piece off the bench. I think running that second unit offense can still put the ball in the bucket and provide you some nice things. But it's just a case of the Eastern Conference getting better. As we move up, the number 8 seed, I went with the Toronto Raptors. Of course, the Raptors had a pretty damn good season last year. I believe they finished as the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. Yes.
Yeah.
They got a top 6 spot in the Eastern Conference. They were sort of a surprise team in a way. They were the second team in 26 seasons of play-by-play data to have a better than average offense in regards to points scored for 100 per 100 possessions, while ranking in the bottom 5 in effective field goal percentage. So they were good offensively, but they weren't always super efficient offensively. And that's sort of where I worry with this team. They don't necessarily have didn't have a go-to guy that can get a bucket whenever you need him to. Now we're hoping that Scotty Barnes, will take another step and potentially develop into that guy. And we know they're going to be well coached, and we know that Nick Nurse is great. We know that they're going to compete and play hard every night. They're going to play defense. But my concern is, of course, where is that go-to scoring coming from? I do like their starting 5, Van Vliet, and then you get very lengthy with Gary Trent Jr., Scotty Barnes, potentially OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. I'm really looking at OG as a guy who needs to make the leap. He's been unhealthy, been hurt, missed 63 games over the past 2 seasons, but he's only 25. He's entering his 6th season. He has some experience. If he can take that next step, then you never know. With Scotty Barnes taking another step, Siakam still there after, last year earning 13 All-NBA honors, one of 5 players in the league to average 22 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. I like the pieces we have here. Precious Achua as well, either coming off the bench or in a starting role, and then Chris Boucher, who contributed as well. I think they signed Otto Porter, who should give them some good minutes as well. I like their team and I love their coach, but as I said, Eastern Conference got better. I think they're bound to take a little bit of a step back, but I could definitely see a scenario where Scotty Barnes takes that next step. OG Anunoby is as big as a contributor as he's ever been, and Siakam has another great season. Van Vliet has another great season. They're playing defense. They're playing hard every night, and they have a great regular season, and they're able to get into that top 6.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. I personally really struggled with who to put at this 8 spot because there's a lot of teams where you put them at 8 and it feels too low, like say Atlanta, or you put them at 8 and it feels too high. But I ultimately was between Toronto and Atlanta. Um, I did end up going with Toronto because I just think Atlanta has more high end talent, but I don't feel that good about it just because I really do like this Raptors team. Um, I think there's a chance they could be even better than last year or maintain that 48 win pace, which I think would get them to the top six in the East because of how young they are. They're only going to get better, and they play such a unique style of basketball. I mean, they're just such a fun team. Their lineup. that their lineups that they can put out there of all 6-8 guys. There's nothing like it in the league, and they cause a lot of problems for opposing teams. And teams have to game plan for them, not the other way around, because they're so unique, and that plays to their advantage. But it ultimately comes down to the same things you said. It's just the East got better and the team stayed the same. And Scotty Barnes, I think, will take a jump. I think he'll probably be around 18 a game this year. I think that's probably fair to say. He could even go higher than that. But oh man, it's really tough. It's really tough. It really just depends on how you feel about Scotty Barnes, where you put this team.
Yeah, but it's not that we don't like their team. It's just
Right. Yeah.
the Eastern Conference, the competition, and trying to predict how many games they're going to win the regular season is tough. So at number 7, I think we were both kind of in the same mindset here. We were both considering the same teams. We have a little bit different of an order, but I think we generally agree on what teams are going to be in the play-in. I had the Atlanta Hawks. I just think that, I loved adding DeJounte Murray. He's one of my favorite players still. I actually like that trade from both perspectives. I think we talked about it when it happened. So, you get a guy who's can play on or off the ball, help Trae Young, guard the best player on the opposing team in some cases, has been a great defender his entire career, sort of learned how to win and came from a good culture in San Antonio. I love adding him with Trae Young. I think it's going to take not a lot of pressure, but a good amount of pressure off Trae Young, especially in the regular season. Trae Young obviously could be a sleeper MVP candidate if he plays well, and the Hawks are winning a lot of games. So you have a star backcourt. DeAndre Hunter going into the season is playing for a contract extension. And I think that's the big storyline here. We loved him coming out of Virginia, but he's had some injury issues throughout the first couple of years of his career. But when we've seen him on the court, he's made a huge difference, especially defensively, for this Atlanta Hawks team. And that was without a guy like DeJounte Murray, whose, I think, best attribute, or at least most improved attribute, has been his ability to play make in San Antonio. Averaged almost 10 assists per game last year at 9 and something assists. So I do think with Hunter's three-point shooting ability, along with his wing defense ability, if he stays healthy, you've just automatically gotten a lot better defensively. And then you have Clint Capella as that guy protecting the rim. I love Okongwu as well. So I like this team. Last year, they were the second-ranked offense, but averaged a league low 297 passes per 24 minutes of possession. So it was a lot of sort of isolation, not as much ball movement as you would like. I'm going to look for that as well. But I do think adding a guy like DeJounte Murray will help with that. My main question is, will they finally embrace that defensive mindset that they need to embrace during the regular season to be an elite team on both sides of the floor and to win the amount of games that you need to win to get to a top 6 seed? Last year, at times, they fell apart defensively. But, I think with what they have right now, they're a lot better equipped to be that team if they just buy into whatever Nate McMillan, who I also like as a potential Coach of the Year candidate, if this Hawks team can get to a higher ceiling or place of success. But yeah, I think they're going to have a really good year. I do think they'll probably be a top seed in the play-in and be on the edge of that 6-7 seed all season long. They might even get off to a hot start. Who knows? It maybe drop down a little bit as the season goes on and the competition gets tougher. But yeah, I think the trade was good. The question is just going to be, are they good enough to elevate into that next tier? And I'm not sure they are right now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of rumors swirling around this roster, and it has been like that for a while. Are they going to move John Collins? Are they going to move Clint Capella? Are they going to move yada yada yada? Whatever the case may be. But all that being said, they did make a lot of changes this offseason. They let Danilo Gallinari walk, let Kevin Herter walk, and I think they have less depth. But in some ways, I think now that they have more of a established hierarchy and roles for each of these guys, I think that will actually help them in a regular season sense. I think they had a lot of wings where last year that they just didn't really know what role to have them in. For example, Cam Reddish, they had to trade him for almost nothing because they just didn't really know what to do with him. And you know, that's not really a great situation to be in. You're just kind of in no man's land there. You've invested in the guy and you don't know how to get him minutes or how to get him in rhythm in a game. And now that they kind of cleared some of that out, I think that will help them. But overall, I just don't know how to feel about this Hawks team. We've talked about this for years. Can they get Trey more off ball? Can they, have him be a little bit less heliocentric? Him and Luca are, always going to be compared, but also because of their style of play. They're the most heliocentric guys in the league today. Always running pick and roll, basically every possession, always the pick and roll ball handler, always the center of attention of the defense. And I think DeJounte Murray will help that, but I also think if things kind of go south early, it could go really bad. Like it could be a fire sale because this front office, I get the feeling that they're kind of just on edge with some of these guys. They're kind of on their last bit of patience with, say, a John Collins or a Clint Capella, for example.
Yeah, John Collins is an interesting case. Got his contract extension, I believe it was before last season, and didn't have a very good year last year. So he's going to need to take a step forward if this team wants to reach higher heights. But I think we agreed on the 7, 8, 9 and just had a little minor disagreement on who's going to be 10, but we were considering the same team. So I'm pretty surprised. I thought there would be some more variation there, especially with the play-in. But I think I can safely assume now that we're going to have the same teams for our top 6. It's just going to be what order. And to start that off, making the playoffs as a top 6 seed automatically, finally, is going to be the Brooklyn Nets. I have them at 6. Now, look, I think there is an everything goes right scenario and an everything goes wrong scenario. An everything goes right scenario is this team, Kyrie Irving plays, he's committed, Durant's committed, they stay healthy, Ben Simmons stays healthy, he plays, 50-plus games. They look really good, like we think they would on paper. And this roster with Joe Harris returning, Nick Claxton as a guy who keeps improving, and the bench with Seth Curry, Patty Mills, adding a guy like Royce O'Neal. The draft, Cam Thomas, TJ Warren. I mean, it's a really good roster. It looks really good on paper. if the good on paper translates to the on court product, this is a team that could win a lot of games in the regular season, be a top 4 seed, and be a contender for a championship. Now, the everything goes wrong scenario is sort of just what we've seen the past couple of years. It's Ben Simmons either isn't healthy or doesn't play for whatever reason. Kyrie Irving is in and out. Durant, the drama based on his trade request this offseason. There's a lot of noise, and they just don't live up to expectations. I think for me, just mentally, I fall somewhere right in the middle. I think we're going to see more games than we've ever seen from this Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving duo. They're going to be more committed coming into the season. I think the preseason has given us hints at what Ben Simmons could look like on this team if he plays. And that's given me some more confidence. And then their team in general is just super talented and has a lot of proven players. So I think there are teams that I like more in front of them and that I can trust more in front of them. But I can certainly see both ends of the spectrum, and I'm ultimately just falling somewhere in the middle.
Okay, yeah, I can see that 100%. For me at 6, I have probably a bit of a surprise for some people. I have the Miami Heat at 6. I'm a bit lower on them this year. And I think the East will be good enough to where I think 48 wins probably is the 6th seed. I think to me, there's a tier gap between the 7th team, which will probably be around 43, 44 wins, and the number 6 team, which will probably be 48, 49. And to me, it really just comes down to I just think this offense is anemic. They lost some key pieces. They lost PJ Tucker, and I question, can they get enough offensively? And I know that they're relying on some guys to take the next step in house. Obviously, all the Bam Adebayo stuff. He says he's going to take 18 shots a game, but it also is, can he make enough out of those 18 shots to really make it worth it? I just don't really think he's that type of player. I think he's good in his role of, being a complement and being a, 15-point a game guy. I don't think, I mean, I could be completely wrong on this, but I don't know if he's going to be able to be reliable enough as a 23 point per game scorer that they need from him this year. And then, oh man, I could be completely wrong here. I openly admit that, but I just think this team took a step backwards, and I think some of their flaws are kind of might be exposed this year. I think this was a flawed team last year that ended up being the 1 seed. Things kind of went their way to close the year. They got healthy and they got hot, but I don't know. The Heat kind of have this trend of being up and down season to season, and I think this just might be where they go down a little bit.
It's certainly fair. I can 1,000% see that, and I think I'm a little bit higher on the Heat than you are, but I'm not that much higher on the Heat than you are. And I can certainly understand where you're coming from because I have them at number 5. I have them taking a little bit of a step back in the regular season. Now, we're going to have to see what their matchup is and how they are playing come postseason time and
100%. Yeah.
judge that when we cross that bridge. But I do think with the top of the East being so good right now, with a team that I'm going to mention next making a big move, and then the top 3, of course, I just think they will, in the competition in the East in general, getting tougher, which has been a theme throughout this podcast, they will drop a little bit in the regular season. For me, it's just, I think a team that like this, that's veteran laden with leadership, cohesion, and the coaching of Eric Spoelstra, the defensive mindset is going to be there at the end of the day in the top 6 somewhere, as long as injuries don't derail it. I think Jimmy Butler doesn't give nearly enough respect at times for what he does, especially come the postseason. I love Bam Adebayo. I think he's fantastic. And everyone else just sort of falls in line. Of course, Tyler Hero winning the Sixth Man of the Year last year. And, they have some other nice pieces. Max Strus, Oladipo, guys that stepped in last year when players were hurt. My ultimate question is, what's going to happen at the point guard position? Because they brought Kyle Lowry in from Toronto in a big move a couple of years ago. And, he brought all the necessary ingredients to the point guard spot. The problem is he's got a body that can't seem to withstand the rigors of the NBA season. It can't really be relied upon to be there when you need him the most. He's not really the same player. He was limited by a bad hamstring, sent the Heat scrambling at the end of last season. I think he needs to come in at a little bit less of a weight, a little bit more in shape if he wants to withstand and sort of be available more for this team. I think he's a big question mark for me on this roster. And there's certainly some questions about, at times, this offense becomes somewhat stagnant. It's hot and cold at times. I'm looking at Duncan Robinson as a guy who, does one thing particularly well, but when that one thing isn't going well, he sort of becomes somewhat of a liability. And that's going to be something to watch, I think, throughout the season, is whether or not he is consistently being a contributor from the 3-point range like he's put on the court to do. So I just think there are the pieces here, the cohesion, the team chemistry, the leadership, the coaching will get them somewhere within the top 6. You have them at 6. I have them at 5. I think I can trust them a little bit more than I can the Nets right now. But I could be wrong. This is just a prediction, and we'll just have to see.
Yeah. And I didn't even mention Kyle Lowry. He's also part of my concerns as well. But anyways, my number 5, I have the Brooklyn Nets. I think the dust has kind of settled. They've had a few months after, the whole summer fiasco. And I think they're kind of tired of the drama within the team. Even the players themselves, I think they know it. I think they're just like, okay, let's focus on basketball right now. Let's just have the best season we can. And I think health is going to play a big factor with this team. And I just think just finding where Ben Simmons will fit best will also be a question with this team. I think obviously it's clear on defense. He's guarding the best player. But on offense, when he doesn't have the ball, when Kyrie and KD will need to ISO, where are you putting him? Where are you putting him in the dunker spot? Are you putting him? Is he going to try to cut and do different things? Is he going to screen? Those types of things are what I question. Are you going to put him in like a Draymond Green type of role, in the short role? I think that's where I kind of question things, and I also don't feel good about Steve Nash making the right moves in that sense with Ben Simmons. Will he use Ben Simmons in the right way? That's a big question I have right now. And to be honest, like Steve Nash really hasn't shown to be able to make the right adjustments. He could, take a step forward as a coach. He was a brand new coach when they hired him, and this is his 3rd season in. So I think this is a big year for Steve Nash. I think he's got to take control of that locker room. And I think as an organization, and he's played a part in this as well. I think it's been too much enabling. I think as the coach, you got to take control and really make sure that things are running right.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Steve Nash. He certainly plays a part in this as well. It should be interesting how the Nets shape out. So it's interesting that we have sort of the same. We have teams in the same area. We just disagree a little bit on the order. At number 4, I put the Cleveland Cavaliers. I have them in my top 4 as a top 4 seed. You look at what they did last year. Got up to a hot start. They were 9-5, 14 games into the year. You know, got everybody excited. They were sort of that hurry up and wait team last year. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley emerged as 2 pillars that I think will continue to be 2 pillars for this team. They doubled their win total from the season prior, from 22 to 44 wins last year. I believe they were the only team to do that. Injuries and other struggles ended up derailing them a little bit at the end of the season. 9-17 finish to the regular season, followed by back-to-back losses in the play-in tournament to Brooklyn and the Hawks. But enter Donovan Mitchell, who they made the big move. It commanded a hefty price. The single, trading away Colin Sexton and some other pieces. But Sexton has his own issues, missing 70 games last year anyway. I think getting Donovan Mitchell for a team that was great defensively last year, ranked 5th in defensive rating, that's a nod to what J.D. Bickerstaff has been able to do with the mindset and the mentality of this team, with those 7-footers in the front court with Mobley and Jared Allen. Kevin Love coming off the bench still. But they were 20th on the offensive end, and they were in desperate need of a number 1 guy, a go-to guy on the offensive end that can get buckets. And Donovan Mitchell, I think, is that guy. He's a legitimate scoring star, was sort of disgruntled, I think, a little bit the past year or 2 in Utah. And I think a fresh start will sort of revitalize him, and he's going to play well in the regular season. He's going to help this team a lot on the offensive end. And even if they take a step up from, say, 20th in offensive rating to, say, 13th or 14th, I think that's a big jump, and that will help them a lot to win more games. Right now, if you look at their team, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, I love that as a backcourt duo. There are some defensive questions there, but we obviously like what they have in the front court defensively, and I do think J.D. Bickerstaff, with Isaac Okoro, obviously, as a guy that can guard on ball as well, and some of the guys they have off the bench, I don't think it'll be too much of a problem. We obviously love Evan Mobley and Jared Allen defensively. Evan Mobley, his ability to score around the rim, block shots, do everything, and then Jared Allen kind of doing the same, and was your pick for Defensive Player of the Year. I think they made some moves. Their big move was, of course, Donovan Mitchell. You have Karis LeVert, who, is a nice piece to have. And then Kevin Love. He actually led the NBA in double-doubles among reserves last year, and was tied for the league lead in drawing charges. So he still gives this team plays a big role off the bench with Ricky Rubio, who might be out a few months from the left ACL tear he suffered past December. But I think his playmaking, defense, and leadership off the bench will also play a big part once he comes back. I like this Cleveland team, but primarily I do think that given what they already had instilled defensively, adding Donovan Mitchell on the offensive end is going to propel them to have a big regular season. And I think it'll get them into the top 4.
Yeah, I agree. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers at 4 as well. Um, to me, it just comes down to I think the defense is going to remain top 6, top 7 in the league, and this offense it just got better. It's as simple as that. I mean, this offense last year it was a whole lot of Darius Garland running everything. And he's going to be running the show as well this year, but he's got way more support this time around. Evan Mobley is going to be improved, presumably. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell, and of course, also Isaac Okoro, a guy who a lot of people don't talk about. He kind of struggles to shoot the ball. He's a great defender, but he can, if he can just be a 35% 3-point shooter, 33% 3-point shooter, that would make a huge difference. I think he's an X factor for this team. But to me, it just comes down to this front line is elite. All like the versatility they have to be able to guard on the perimeter and defend the rim at an elite level in tandem. Um, I just think their ability to protect the rim, uh, it's unmatched throughout the whole NBA. The only team I can think of that can even kind of compare is the Bucks with their front line with Giannis and Brook Lopez. I just think Darius Garland also. I think he's still underrated. I think he could average 26, 27 in 27 a game this year, possibly. I think his game is just so smooth and he's only going to get better. I'm really high on the Cavs. I really like the way this roster is built, and I just think they have a really good balance of youth and veterans.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're going to have a great regular season. Now, what they do come playoff time is yet to be seen, but I think we both agree there. Number 3, this might surprise some people a little bit. I have the Boston Celtics, who you can make the argument has the best roster, like top to bottom, players 1 through 9 or 10. They might be the deepest team in the entire Eastern Conference, the best team in the Eastern Conference when it's all said and done. But there is a level of uncertainty right now, I think, around the organization. Just because Joe, what is the coach's name? Missoula, I think is how you say it. I think Ime Udoka played a huge part in what this team was able to do last year, as sort of that steady the ship CEO type coach that sort of controlled everything, got them through a rough start, and had them playing well by playing time or by playoff time, and was able to guide them through multiple tough playoff series to ultimately get to the finals. They had that 2-1 lead on the Golden State Warriors, led by 4 with less than 5 minutes left in Game 4, but scored only 3 points on their final 8 possessions of the game. Golden State ended up winning that game, and then that sort of spiraled into losses in Game 5 and Game 6, and they lost the series and came out just short of an NBA championship. My question is, for the Celtics, what is the offense going to look like late in games? There were repeated instances late last year where the offense it disappeared late in games, especially in the playoffs, which is, I think, what ultimately matters for this team now, that they reached the finals last year. They know that they can get there. They know they're capable of doing it. They're just gonna have to finish the job. I don't think the regular season matters as much for them. Now, of course, getting home court for as long as you can in the playoffs and getting that seeding will matter. But I don't think it's as necessary for them as some people think. They were a pretty good road team last year, I think. They're really good defensively. I think defense travels in the NBA. Adding Malcolm Brogdon will be huge. And the roster is great. It's just I don't know. There's some uncertainty with Missoula now running the ship at head coach, and I need to see an improvement from the late game offense. They scored less than a point per clutch possession in the regular season last year. Just 57 points on 64 clutch possessions and 89 points per 100 possessions. Um, you know, uh, rating in the playoffs. I do think Brogdon should help that, getting another ball handler. They can sort of micromanage each of those backcourt players with Derek White, Marcus Smart, and Malcolm Brogdon. I love their roster. I just think we'll see. We'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I think the questions on their coach are fair, but for me personally, I had the 76ers at 3. Um, to me, it's kind of the same things. I got to see it to believe it with the Sixers. I'm not a Sixers hater per se. I mean, some Sixers fans probably, if they watch this show, they probably may think I'm a Sixers hater because I'm just very pessimistic about some of their habits in terms of style of play, in terms of you know being detail oriented. Some of the things that we've seen from Doc Rivers, some of the mistakes defensively here and there, the toughness of the team, and obviously they addressed that with some of the moves that they made in the offseason with the addition of PJ Tucker, with the addition of you know um, point guard from the Grizzlies. I did the same thing last time. Couldn't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about. They traded for him in the offseason. Um, they addressed that toughness aspect, but I do think there will be, you know, still that mental wall they have to get over. I mean, we've seen this. I mean, the Celtics have, let's be real, they've owned them the last few years. In this, process era of Sixers basketball, the Celtics have owned them. That's just, there's no other way around it. They have. And I still think the Bucks are better. I still think the Celtics are better. That's the bottom line.
Fair enough. Number 2, I have the Sixers. Um, Obviously, I love the roster, what they have. Um, Embiid, I think, is no doubt an MVP candidate. What he's able to do. I need to go to their. I have all the teams and their rosters pulled up. I need to go to their team page to remind myself of. Let's see, where are they? Yeah, PJ Tucker. You talked about him. I think there's a stat out there that every season, every team he's been on, they've automatically taken a huge step up defensively. He's just sort of that guy, that culture instiller, that toughness, the defense, the 3-point shooting. I think that presence is going to be huge for the Sixers. My question, I guess, would be, how does this backcourt hold up defensively? And then what does James Harden look like this season? Coming into the season last year, there were obviously questions about whether or not he was in shape at times, and his commitment and all this sort of stuff. But I think he's still had a really good year last year in terms of, statistics, numbers, but it wasn't to the James Harden standard of past seasons. But I think as a playmaker with a scorer, a microwave scorer type like Tyrese Maxey, I think that could potentially be one of the more potent offensive backcourts in the league. I think he's a good fit. Maxey is alongside a playmaker like Harden. Um, He shot 45% on catch and shoot threes. He's shown growth in his ability to attack closeouts and get to the rim. I think he can be. I think he can take another step offensively to be one of their better scorers. And if he does, along with the possible MVP candidacy of Joel Embiid, PJ Tucker slotted in, leading the league in corner 3-point shots last year, with a solid third, fourth option in Tobias Harris, who's one of my concerns. Didn't really shoot the ball all that well last year, 35% catch and shoot on 3-pointers, and at times was sort of somewhat of a ball stopper in this offense. In his, I wouldn't say unwillingness to pass, but just it somehow worked out to where at times there were too much isolation, that sort of thing, not enough ball movement in the offense. But I do think adding around the edges really helped. DeAnthony Melton is a guy that I think will not only help on defense. He was fourth with 4.5 deflections per 36 minutes last year, but he'll help in transition as well. Getting a guy that Daryl Morey already knows and is familiar with in Daniel House Jr. from the Houston Rockets, I think will help as well off the bench. And then you talked about that toughness, that mindset, Montrezl Harrell as well. Another efficient pick and roll big guy who can come off the bench and complement Harden when Joel Embiid has to sit, and he can eat some regular season minutes. So I like the Sixers. I think the questions that you have are fair, but I do think they're going to win a lot of games in the regular season. That's ultimately why I have them at the number 2 seed. But I think it's going to be anywhere in between, probably the 2 seed and the 4 seed for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably anywhere between maybe even the 1 seed and the 4 seed. I think they do have a high ceiling. That's definitely for sure. Okay. For my number 2 spot, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. I thought about this a lot. I really did. I'm really high on Giannis. Y'all know that if you've watched this podcast. I really think the negative talk around him is kind of overblown, overrated, whatever you want to call it. But this Bucks team, they're going to be fantastic in the regular season. They always are. But they also kind of stagnated as well. And, people will say, oh, they would have beaten the Celtics if they had Chris Middleton. And, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair to say. But the thing that we say every year with the Bucks is their Achilles heel is giving up their 3-point shot. And if you look at the Eastern Conference, every single one of these top 5 teams, whether you want to say the Nets, whether you want to say, the Cavs, the Sixers, Celtics, they all added shooting, and they're all more deep than they were last year. I'm not going to say the Bucks aren't deep. They are. But I still have some questions. I think they're 100% a championship contender, but whether they'll win as many regular season games as my number 1 team, the Celtics, I think that's up for debate. I guess I'll just lead straight into the number 1 since I already said it. The Celtics, I think the questions you have about their coach are fair, but here's my reasoning. I think if you look at the point where their season shifted last year, I believe they were like 15-19 or 16-19 or something like that. And they went on a huge run. I just think it was more of we found we found ourselves type of thing. And their net rating during that stretch was they were blowing out everybody. I think they had a net rating of over 10 over that stretch. And that kind of led itself into the playoffs when they continued to show that amazing defense. And I just think their style of play really bodes well for a lot of regular season wins. Um, the level of defense that they play, and also, you know, I think Jaylen Brown could take a step forward as well. Jason Tatum, I think he'll be looking at that finals tape and go, okay, I need to be more versatile with some of the spots that I score. Scoring in the paint, scoring in the mid range, scoring in becoming a more 3-level scorer rather than in the paint and at the 3-point line only. But the Celtics, I just think they got better. They got a lot better with addressing that one need that they have in a stable ball handler in Malcolm Brogdon. I think that can help them kind of mitigate some of their struggles in clutch situations just because he's a guy who's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to be steady. He's going to make the right reads. And he's extremely reliable as well. So I think some of the close game struggles might still be there, and they 100% could, fall back to number 3 or whatever the case may be because of the loss of Ime Udoka for the year. But I just think this team will kind of jump straight off, like continue off from where they left last year's regular season, which was in full force.
Completely fair. Absolutely, completely 100% fair. But I think the other perspective is also fair. I think it's just where you think ultimately your perspective on the coaching situation and then some of these other questions that you have and you brought up with their team. They certainly have, and I even said it, possibly the best roster in the East. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But that doesn't always translate into winning the most games and getting the number 1 seed in the regular season. But we'll just have to see. I have the Bucks at number 1. I toyed with putting the Sixers at number 1 just because I think they have a high regular season ceiling. We'll have to see what their matchup is come the playoffs. But I just think they could have the type of year where they win a lot of games in the regular season. By a lot, I mean like 55 games if Harden is on the court and Embiid is an MVP candidate and all this other stuff sort of falls into place. PJ Tucker ends up helping them a lot, that sort of thing. But I also think the same thing I could see the scenario where that happens with the Celtics too, obviously. But I also think the same thing about the Milwaukee Bucks, who have that guy in Giannis, who's now in his age 27 season. And if you look at, we obviously know what Giannis has done so far in his career. 2 MVPs that he won back-to-back, a Defensive Player of the Year award. And now he has an NBA championship. And what was an all-time single-player performance in that series against the Phoenix Suns with some all-time performances with a Finals MVP trophy, already a Hall of Fame caliber player. But if you look at what a lot of the legends achieve between their age 27 and say their age 33, 34 season, it's pretty scary to think about what Giannis could end up doing by the time he's not necessarily done or exiting his prime, but by the time he's sort of entering the latter stage of his career or the latter half of his career. They have the best player in the game, in my opinion. My concern for the Bucks is just ultimately comes down to Obviously, the health of Chris Middleton is a huge factor, mainly more for the playoffs than the regular season. But we know the Greek freak, Giannis, but this is a older, higher mileage team. They've you know, it's been a long run already. And if you look at their starting lineup or their main core, they have Chris Middleton, who's 31, who I don't think necessarily any of these guys are slowing down anytime soon. I just think with sort of the mileage that this team has, I guess, encountered or built up the past couple of years, with sort of some of the older players on the team, a big offseason addition for this team was Joe Ingles, who's, I believe, in his 30s. They have, Middleton, Drew Holiday, and 5 other players, which are ages 33 to 36. It's just going to be interesting to see their mindset and how many games they're actually going to try to win in the regular season. But I do think, given that Brook Lopez will be healthy and some of the other factors here, they certainly have a chance to be the number 1 seed. So I don't know, man. It's this Eastern Conference, I think, is really, really good, top to bottom. We obviously mentioned some of the teams that we didn't even have in our top 10. For me, Detroit was right on the outside looking in, and then Washington's another interesting one. And then, you'll have the bad teams as well, but I do think the top, especially of this conference, is going to be super, super intriguing to watch. Start to finish the playoffs. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we might have a 3-leg race for that 1 seed. It's going to be an arms race between Embiid, Giannis, and Tatum to see who. And those 3 guys could also be in the middle of an MVP race as well, in the midst of all of that. So the East is incredible. I'd say the one thing about my list might be the Pistons. That's the only one I question. Like, they could, on the other side of it, they could also, not even get to 30 wins and make me look really stupid. But it all really depends on how well they start, because they might, start, 2-11 and then abort mission and then, tank for Wembanyama or whatever the case may be. So it's all about winning those close games for them and getting off to a good start. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Hope you all enjoyed. It was right around hour 24, 25, I think is when we're going to finish it. So it's just, pretty on point with how we've been going the last, 50 episodes or so. So hope you all enjoyed that. Let us know if y'all prefer the live stream rather than, recording it and, releasing it later. For me personally, I'd probably prefer the live stream just because the editing aspect of it. But it'd be interesting to hear y'all's feedback on it. Another thing is, shout out to Ryan. I don't know, who you are, where you're from, man, but you were making your presence felt in the chat earlier. I wish I would have seen that when we were talking about that stuff, but thanks, man. We really appreciate you watching. And unless you have anything else to add, man, I'm gonna let you sign us off.
No, I think that was a great episode. I think we'll be back probably this weekend. I guess the season starts on Tuesday, right? So we got to do our Western Conference predictions sometime before then. So we'll have that. Probably be talking about something else basketball related in that episode as well. But before all that, be sure to catch our picks podcast that we do every week for football, which will probably be tomorrow night at some time after the Thursday night football game. So in some of the playoff games, of course, I'm a Yankees fan, so I'll be watching the Yankees game as well. But yeah, be sure to look out for that. We're also going to be recapping some of the baseball that's happened since we last talked. So that'll be fun. So just be on the lookout for all our content moving forward. Like, subscribe to our channel. We greatly appreciate it. And I guess, just like Vladimir Guerrero's chances of having his last year was the preview, this year is going to be the movie, saying come to light or come to truth as the Toronto Blue Jays took an early exit in this year's baseball playoffs. We are going, gone. Peace out.
Peace.